years later, he's capable of...
Well, allegedly. We don't know.
Allegedly, sorry.
We don't know.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah. I mean, it's shocking it's come out, and it's... I'm looking at it thinking, why is it coming out now?
It's because he's been named.
Yeah.
And clearly journalists are now digging into that name. They're looking at... What is interesting that we were discussing outside in the newsroom is that the press have come up with lots of photographs of him as a young kid, but nothing more recent, which is odd in a way.
Because apparently he was a recluse. So apparently he suffered from a lot of mental health, and apparently he barely left his house in 7 years. So that's why I've been quite disappointed that these riots are taking, the limelight away from looking at if he did commit this crime, what caused him to commit this crime, what was his mental health state. There's all these questions now that we need to piece together about this.
Well, the authorities will be piecing those things together now as his defence and, as both sides of the argument prepare for a legal case, but which is why we don't know very much. But it's very odd that the only photographs that the press have been able to access are these of much younger, and they've come up with this fact that he started. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a trailer.
Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's actually done about Doctor Who. Comes out of the TARDIS and he speaks to camera and he's
really
promoting children in need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also it goes back to what's the trouble that's sort of come as a result of this. He wasn't an asylum seeker, didn't come on a boat, he's not a Muslim.
All of those things that were falsely put about,
which they say is why they've gone on to do this rampage, and it's very sad.
Yes, I mean this is the issue that the protest seems to have been triggered by false information, but what it clearly has been is just a spark that's lit huge underlying concerns in the country. I wonder how you both feel about that.
It's been very unsettling because, I do understand why people feel the way they do, but I feel like we do need to have these conversations as a country, no matter how uncomfortable it is. But then the thing that I keep on hearing is people saying, I want my country back. And I feel like, what do you mean by when you say you want your country back? As a black person, does that mean you don't want no ethnic people here, no people of different faiths here? So that's when it becomes unsettling. Obviously, I was born in Britain and I feel British.
Well,
but then
British.
I am British, but then obviously I've got my ethnic heritage, which is West African Ghanaian. But then I remember a time when, my older cousins will tell me, in the 70s, in the 80s, the EDL will be out there looking for black people to attack. And so then when I hear that, I obviously wasn't growing up in that era, so then when I see all these riots coming out, you feel like, oh my gosh, are we regressing back as a country? Back to that. But I understand people's frustration, but I just feel the way they're venting it is wrong.
What do you feel?
I actually come on yesterday talking about it, and I was saying that a lot of this the misinformation comes from young men that are not well educated, not well informed, believing what they're seeing on social media and online, AI generated images and whatever. And then this morning I was looking at the riots in Sunderland last night, and there's guys walking down the road with swastikas on their back, on his back, one of them, and they're going, "Yeah, you're proper British, and I'm like, mate. Millions of people die. We fought in this country to get rid of people like you. Yeah. So if it is a bunch of neo-Nazis and they are just racist, people that want to go out and commit this crime, well, what happened to the Nazis? And that can happen again.
It's hugely difficult because there will always be an extreme who sort of float to the top in some of these things. But it's about, as you say, Steph, it's about addressing those concerns that a lot of ordinary people have, who aren't racist people. Yeah. They're not Islamophobic or anything else. They're just concerned with the direction the country's going.
Well, and will be frightened as well at the moment.
But, it's what I think to myself, who is to blame here? A bit of me is like, do we take it back down to number 10? Like, the state of this country, who do we blame it on? Do we blame it on the immigrants or do we blame it on our politicians?
It's politicians, really, isn't it? Because there are, as you say, there are lots of difficult conversations around here, which politicians have avoided, and they've said, "Oh, you've just got to accept
Swept it underneath
all
the
of
carpet."
this," without actually these difficult conversations being had, so that people do feel like their voice is being represented.
Do you agree, Winston, that the politicians have been so reluctant to speak out about the underlying issues?
Well, we've had decades and decades of people talking about. Go back to Thatcher's talking about, people have got a right to be worried about people coming here and this, not having the British values and culture, being undermined by immigration. This has been going on for decades, 50, 60 years. Enoch Powell, late 60s, giving his speech, so it's not a new thing. I just feel frustrated. Look, my dad's Jamaican, my mum's English, I'm British. I love being in this country. I love being part of this country. I went away on holiday recently and I love the feeling of coming back to it. But seeing these scenes going on and this feeling of, well, you're not a white British working class man, so you don't count. I'm like, well, where do we sit?
Well, that's what's got to be addressed by all of this, and will only be done by talking about it, in a sense, because otherwise that sort of racist sentiment will rise to the top, and that's got to be stopped. That absolutely has to be stopped while still addressing it. Well, I think by talking about it, and I think by acknowledging that there is concern about levels of immigration and the fact that in some communities, where English almost seems to be a second language, all these sort of things, which are hugely difficult to talk about because people say you're being racist. But actually, by talking about it, what you prevent is this sort of widespread, almost lazy racism coming where people say, well, unless you're white, then there's a problem.
In a way, I don't agree with the riots, but I think it's come at a good time as we've got a new government. So now it's up to Sir Keir Starmer to really... He has a chance to make a change here and to address what's really going on in this country. Because if not...
But is a Labour government the government that's going to be able to do that? Historically, Labour governments have been known as being a bit lefty and woke.
Well, here's the thing. Labour was meant to be for the people. And Labour hasn't been for the people. And I say the people, I mean working class people is supposed to have been that as the answer to the Conservatives. And it hasn't been that for many, many decades. And it's like, there was a thing John Prescott I was reading about in the late 90s said, we're all middle class now. There isn't working class, and it's like
certainly is.
There certainly is, and this now it's like pushed like this almost underclass of people that are got no voice, they've got no say, they've got the industry's been taken away from them, the houses have been sold off. There's not enough housing. Well, the houses are sold off, so the people that need it the most haven't been getting it, and then that's the underlying problems that are then causing to think, the immigrants must be the problem. And actually, no, it's the success of governments, we go back to governments, that have been actually orchestrating and allowing the working class to be pushed down and not given a voice. So maybe, bring some of these people to the table and let's talk about this and work out how you can be given what you want. Everyone's, if we're going to be in a country...
But part of the issue, you say immigration isn't the problem, and it's not, immigration as a whole is not an issue, and it's always happened, and it can be seen as a very positive thing. It's this sort of uncontrolled immigration. It's the point where there's a hotel in every town in the country, pretty much, that's being used to house immigrants at great expense, whilst working class people particularly are struggling and suffering and not getting support. And that's the problem, isn't it? Or at least part of the problem.
I think that is the problem, and I think this is why people are acting out, because people are seeing their towns and their cities change and resources becoming very far and few. But this is when it goes back down to the government, because the government has the power to change this. But when we be realistic, is this going to change overnight?
We see what worries me is they set up working parties, a bit like Keir Starmer announcing yesterday that he was going to set up this new task force. Working parties, task forces, they can take 5 or 6 years to even do anything at all. And it's just the politicians' way of saying we're dealing with that and tick the box. And actually they're not dealing with it at all.
And if we do leave it 5 or 6 years, I think this country will be just down the drain by then. I think the relations will be bad. I think just everything will just be falling flat.
Yeah, we've got to deal with it a bit more head on. Well, I'll tell you what, that was an interesting discussion, and we appreciate you